The royal wedding that redefined history, Leonor and Christian 2025. The world has witnessed many royal weddings. But none like this. None that changed everything. None that redefined what it meant to be royal. This wasn't just a union of two heirs. It was a love story that rewrote tradition, bridged nations, and reshaped history itself. This is the royal wedding that redefined history, the union of Princess Leonor of Spain and Prince Christian of Denmark. The morning of the wedding began in silence. Madrid was still, yet alive. Streets were lined with red and gold, the air thick with anticipation. As the sun rose over the royal palace, light spilled across the city, touching thousands who had gathered to witness what they knew would be a historic day. Inside the palace, behind walls centuries old, the future Queen of Spain prepared for the most important walk of her life. Princess Leonor sat by the window, her reflection calm yet filled with emotion. She had been raised in the shadow of responsibility, the firstborn of King Felipe and Queen Letizia, the heir who would someday wear Spain's crown. But today, she wasn't just the future monarch. She was a bride, a woman in love. Her dress, kept secret until this very moment, shimmered with symbolism. Every thread carried meaning, from the golden stitching that represented Spain's resilience, to the delicate Danish lace woven into the sleeves, a tribute to the family she would now join. It wasn't just fashion. It was diplomacy, art, and legacy, stitched into a single garment. Queen Letizia entered the room quietly. For a moment, there were no words. Only the bond between mother and daughter, two queens of different generations, standing on the same threshold of destiny. Letizia reached out, adjusted Leonor's veil, and whispered something only she could hear. It wasn't advice. It was blessing. A mother's final gift before history took over. Meanwhile, in the Danish royal suite, Prince Christian stood before the mirror, his expression a blend of calm and contemplation. He was his father's son, confident, charming, but deeply grounded. Today, he wasn't just marrying a princess. He was becoming part of something far greater. The weight of two monarchies pressed on his shoulders, but when he smiled, it was clear, this was love, not duty. When the palace bells rang, the city erupted. The crowd's cheers echoed through the streets as Leonor's carriage began its journey toward the cathedral. Spanish flags waved alongside Danish ones. In that moment, Madrid didn't feel like one capital, it felt like the beating heart of Europe. Inside the cathedral, centuries of tradition met the pulse of a new era. The vaulted ceilings, the golden chandeliers, the faint scent of roses and candles, everything was perfect. Yet beyond the grandeur, the air carried something purer, sincerity. As Leonor entered, a hush fell over the room. Even the choir seemed to pause. She walked slowly, gracefully, her eyes locked on Christian. Cameras captured every detail, but what no lens could capture was the look they shared, a look that spoke of friendship, trust, and a bond forged long before this day. King Felipe stood proudly, his gaze soft but steady. The weight of the crown was visible on his shoulders, but today, he was simply a father giving away his daughter. When he placed her hand into Christian's, the gesture felt symbolic, a bridge between two kingdoms, a promise that Spain and Denmark would move forward together. The ceremony was filled with emotion. The vows were traditional, yet their words felt modern, heartfelt. Leonor's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. I promise to lead with compassion, to love with courage, and to serve with truth. Christian responded, and I promise to walk beside you, not behind, not ahead, but beside, for all our days. There was a pause, a silence that carried through the cathedral. For a brief moment, royalty disappeared. All that remained was love, raw, real, and deeply human. When they exchanged rings, the world held its breath. The cameras zoomed in, the crowd outside roared, and the cathedral bells began to ring once more. As they kissed, history was written. But the story didn't end at the altar. The reception that followed revealed the unseen heart of the day. In the grand ballroom of the royal palace, dignitaries, royals, and world leaders gathered, yet the mood was unusually warm. Even the formality seemed to fade. Laughter echoed, music swelled, and for once, the monarchy felt alive. Queen Margrethe of Denmark raised her glass, her voice quivering slightly as she toasted the couple. To the next generation, she said, may you carry the strength of our traditions, and the courage to redefine them. King Felipe nodded in agreement, replying, "And may you never forget that love, not lineage, is the truest crown." Those words resonated across Europe. News outlets called it the wedding of unity. Analysts said it symbolized the new face of royalty, modern, emotional, authentic. But behind the headlines, there were private moments few ever saw. Late that evening, after the cameras stopped rolling, Leonor and Christian slipped away to the palace gardens. The night air was cool, the fountains glowed under moonlight, and the faint hum of a city could be heard in the distance. They walked hand in hand, silent, both overwhelmed by the day's magnitude. Leonor looked up at the palace, her home, her duty, her history, and whispered, "Everything changes now." Christian smiled softly and said, "Yes. But only for the better." That quiet exchange, unnoticed by the world, marked the beginning of their reign, not as rulers but as partners. The next morning, the headlines flooded in. A wedding for the ages. Love unites two thrones. Princess Leonor's modern fairy tale. But those who were there knew the truth. This was more than a ceremony. It was a statement that the future of royalty would no longer be bound by walls of protocol but strengthened by humanity and heart. Across Europe, young people who once felt disconnected from the monarchy began to see it differently. They saw in Leonor and Christian something familiar, a relationship rooted in respect, not hierarchy. They were royal, yes, but they were also relatable. Real. Weeks later, behind closed doors, Leonor began her first duties as queen-in-waiting with Christian by her side. Their wedding had redefined more than history, it had redefined expectation. Together, they represented a new kind of leadership, empathetic, forward-looking, deeply personal. And yet, even amid their royal obligations, they never lost the essence of that day. The small, unseen gestures, Leonor's hand brushing against Christian's during public appearances, the way he'd look at her before she spoke, the quiet smiles they shared when no one else noticed. Those moments reminded everyone that beneath the crowns, they were simply two people who chose each other. Years from now, historians will remember the 2025 royal wedding as the event that changed the monarchy forever. Not for its grandeur or spectacle, but for its soul. For the way it made millions believe again in the power of love, unity, and renewal. Because when Princess Leonor and Prince Christian said, "I do," they didn't just unite two nations. They redefined what it meant to lead, with love at the heart of history. This was the wedding that didn't just mark the end of an era. It marked the beginning of a new one. The royal wedding that redefined history, not through pageantry, but through purpose. Not through tradition alone, but through transformation. And in that transformation, the world saw something timeless, that love, when true, can change the course of history.